She broke into Keanu Reeves' private estate at 2:17 a.m., carrying nothing but a flash drive. "I don't want your help," she said, "but the world needs it." By sunrise, they were surrounded. What she revealed would expose a global conspiracy and change Keanu's life forever. But who was hunting her, and why him? Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The wind howled outside Keanu Reeves' remote mountain estate, sweeping snow across the stone driveway like powdered glass. Inside, it was silent. A different kind of quiet. The engineered hush of cutting-edge insulation and automated systems working in perfect harmony. Nestled deep in the Colorado Rockies, the estate was more fortress than home. But tonight, it was simply a place of rest. Keanu sat cross-legged in the sunken living room, nursing a cup of ginger tea, a fire crackling nearby. His dog Dozer lay at his feet, unmoved by the occasional hum of motion sensors and thermal cameras scanning the property. Keanu had built this home not just as a retreat from Hollywood, but as a refuge from noise, literal and metaphorical. The estate ran on a complex AI-integrated infrastructure he'd designed with a few trusted engineers. Every door, light, window, and camera was hardwired to a private, encrypted network with multiple fail-safes. Nothing got in or out unnoticed. So when the lights flickered once, then again, he sat up. Not a power surge. The estate ran on a hybrid off-grid solar battery system with military-grade redundancy. Then the living room speakers crackled. A short hiss, then silence. Keanu set down his mug. Dozer's ears perked. He rose without haste but with purpose, palms grazing the glass coffee table for the remote. A single button tapped. Activate full security sync. A gentle chime echoed through the home. A soft shift in the ambient lighting. The system responded immediately, displaying every room's status in translucent overlays across the perimeter windows. All clear, but his instincts screamed otherwise. He walked quietly to the hallway, eyes scanning for anything out of place. The hallway lights dimmed. Unusual. He tapped his watch. Haptic interface. Mainframe diagnostics, he whispered. Nothing. That wasn't possible. He turned toward the elevator that led to the server room. It was sealed, biometric access only, but the indicator light blinked. Occupied. Keanu narrowed his eyes. Only 2 people had the code to enter that room, and he hadn't given it to anyone. Without hesitating, he moved to the concealed panel beneath the staircase. A mechanical click echoed as it slid open, revealing a compact security console and a silent firearm, non-lethal, modified rubber rounds. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he was ready if it came to that. He descended the elevator shaft manually, avoiding any electronic signal. The emergency stairwell spiraled down 3 levels, each layer cooler than the last. As he reached the server door, he heard it breathing. Light. Panicked. He pressed his ear to the wall, a small shuffle, a sob. He keyed in the emergency override, and the door hissed open. And there she was. A young woman, no more than 19, crouched beside the main server cabinet, trembling. Her hoodie was soaked through with snowmelt, her sneakers muddy, and in one shaking hand, she held a single flash drive. Her other hand gripped the server cable, halfway pulled out. Her lips moved, barely a whisper. "They're coming for me." Then she collapsed. Keanu didn't speak. He simply tilted his head slightly and watched her from a safe distance, observing the tremble in her shoulders, the way her fingers clutched the flash drive like it was her only lifeline. Her hoodie was soaked along the hem, the fabric torn at one sleeve. She looked half-starved and barely coherent, her breath shallow, like she hadn't slept in days. "I need to disable the uplink," she whispered again, this time with more urgency. "They'll find me if you don't." Keanu's voice was low, careful. "You're in my house. You bypassed a system no one's ever cracked. And you're telling me they're tracking you through a system you just accessed." The girl's eyes finally locked with his. "Not yours, mine." That stopped him. She took a shaky breath, backing into the corner of the server room. "They hijacked my code. I planted a subroutine in one of their relay nodes to watch their packet pings, just to see if I could. And then I saw it. What they're moving, where, who." She didn't elaborate, but something in her voice sent a cold thread down Keanu's spine. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl hesitated. Sage Keller." And then her knees buckled. Keanu lunged forward instinctively, catching her just before her head struck the tile. She was light, feverish to the touch. He eased her onto the ground, brushing the hair from her face. Her lips moved, barely audible. "Don't let them take it. It's all on the drive." The room dimmed briefly as the system flickered again. Keanu looked toward the panel. The local server was still isolated from external networks. Whoever they were hadn't breached his firewalls. Yet. He turned back to Sage, unconscious now, her fingers still clenched around the flash drive. Whoever she was, she hadn't come to steal or destroy. She came to warn. Outside, the wind howled harder, and Keanu knew the peace of this mountain night had ended. Keanu carried Sage gently into the main room, placing her on the leather couch near the fireplace. The snow outside had thickened, swirling against the tall windows like warning smoke. He wrapped a wool blanket around her and moved to the touchscreen wall panel beside the kitchen, activating a series of silent lockdown protocols. Steel shutters eased over the windows. Internal motion sensors tripled their scan rate. Exterior drones activated along the ridge. The estate became a fortress in under 60 seconds. He watched her chest rise and fall, slow and shallow. Then his eyes dropped to the flash drive still gripped in her hand. He knelt beside her, pried it carefully from her fingers, and turned it over. No labels, no brand, just a tiny scratched-on mark, the letter V inside a triangle. He plugged it into an offline terminal, one not connected to the grid. A flood of folders appeared, encrypted, no visible names, just numbers. Keanu frowned. These weren't simple personal files. They were fragments of something much larger. Traffic logs, transponder records, IP masks routed through deep state proxies. And then he saw it. A folder with a date from just 5 days ago. Inside, a short video clip, grainy footage of a shipping container yard in Honduras. Armed men, crates, children. His hand gripped the desk. This wasn't just corporate espionage. He turned as Sage stirred, groaning softly. "You weren't supposed to see it," she murmured, without opening her eyes. "I was going to destroy it after I showed them proof." Keanu moved back to her side. "Who, Sage? Who did you want to show?" She blinked slowly, lips cracked. "The agency that funded the program. I thought they'd shut it down, but they didn't. They're the ones moving the cargo." Keanu knelt, steadying her shoulders. "What kind of cargo?" Her eyes finally focused. "People. Kids. From the territories. The data. Some of it loops through cartel nodes. They're moving them using tech I built for predictive logistics. I thought it was for food security." She was shaking now. "I tried to stop it. That's when they came for me. They erased my history, burned my records. I had nowhere else to go." Keanu didn't say anything. Just stood, jaw clenched, and turned toward the fireplace. He'd been in movies that touched on these themes, dark webs, hidden enemies, but this was real. And the fact that she had made it through his defenses meant one thing. She was telling the truth. And if she could find him, then the ones chasing her weren't far behind. He looked out toward the snow-covered pines, toward the empty trail winding down the mountain. They'd be here by morning. And this time, it wasn't a roll. It was war. Keanu knelt beside the unconscious girl, his fingers moving with quiet precision. Her pulse was faint but steady, and her breathing was shallow. A bruise bloomed on her temple, likely from the fall. The flash drive still clutched in her palm trembled slightly in time with her shallow breaths. He moved her gently to the padded bench lining the wall, covered her with the emergency blanket he kept nearby, and tapped the secure medical app on his wrist. Vitals stable, no broken bones, probably dehydration, fear, and exhaustion. Whoever she was, she hadn't come to harm him. Not yet. Minutes passed in silence, save for the quiet hum of the servers and the distant wind against the mountain glass. Then, her eyes fluttered open, wide, wild, searching. Keanu didn't move. He just looked at her calmly. "Where am I?" she whispered. "My home," he said, quietly. "You broke into it." "I didn't mean to," she said, panicked. "I had nowhere else to go." He nodded slowly. "Name?" She shook her head. "I can't. Not yet." Keanu stood, walked over to a drawer, and poured her a glass of water. He handed it to her. She took it with both hands, trembling. "Then tell me why you're here," he said. The girl hesitated, her throat moving as she swallowed hard. "They found something," she said finally. "In the code. I wasn't supposed to." "What kind of code?" he asked. She hesitated again, then lifted the flash drive in her hand like it was a grenade with the pin already pulled. "Shipping data. Network surveillance. Encrypted routes tied to private security firms. Except they're not really security firms. They're front companies. For something darker." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. "They used to hire people like me to test system weaknesses. They said it was white hat stuff, but I cracked one of their buried layers by accident. And what I found..." She trailed off, gripping the drive tighter. "It's not just code." Keanu's eyes narrowed. "You think someone's coming for you?" She nodded. "By sunrise. I tripped a failsafe. They know I saw it. They'll want to erase the evidence. And me." Keanu considered her. His home had panic protocols, surveillance layers no one had ever breached. But she had. She'd gotten through firewalls and facial scans meant to stop mercenaries and stalkers. Still, she was no more than 19. A coder, maybe a prodigy. Or a decoy. "Why not go to the authorities?" he asked. Her voice cracked. "Because the authorities are in the files too." Silence stretched between them. Then, with shaking hands, she plugged the flash drive into the terminal behind her. The screen lit up. One file opened. Keanu leaned in. His breath caught. What he saw wasn't just criminal. It was global, and someone very powerful had gone to great lengths to keep it buried. Keanu stared at the screen, eyes narrowing with each line of code and image unfolding in front of him. It wasn't just raw data. It was mapped movement. Cargo shipments with no declared customs, GPS pings from satellites tagged as inactive, and flight paths from unregistered drones. At first, it looked like smuggling, but the deeper he scrolled, the more he saw. The cities listed were border towns. The metadata matched high crime zones. The shipments were all routed near orphanages, clinics, refugee camps. One section was labeled Human Asset Repositioning. That phrase alone made his stomach turn. "This is trafficking," he muttered, his voice low and grim. The girl nodded. "They use the same encryption style as an old NSA contractor, but this isn't government. It's privatized war." Keanu's jaw clenched. "You're telling me this operation runs beneath government channels and no one knows?" "I think someone knows," she said. "They just don't want anyone else to." He leaned back, staring at the frozen image on the screen. A manifest tagged, "Cleared for sweep," with no destination listed. And they killed to keep it hidden. The girl didn't answer. She didn't have to. Keanu moved toward a touchscreen control embedded in the wall. With a quick swipe of his hand, he activated Level 2 lockdown on the estate. Shutters rolled down. Sensor lights blinked red, then shifted to blue. Automated alerts sealed the perimeter. "You believe me?" she asked quietly. "I believe what I saw," he replied. She exhaled a shudder of relief, but it quickly turned to panic. "I didn't mean for you to be involved. I thought if I reached someone who mattered, who couldn't be bought, maybe they'd protect the story, not me." "You don't need someone who matters," Keanu said, voice calm and clear. "You need someone who won't run." There was a long pause before she said, "They'll come with trackers, quiet drones, maybe even mimic signals. If they get that drive, they'll bury it again." Keanu turned the drive off and unplugged it, slipping it into a fireproof case embedded in the wall. "Then we make sure they don't." She looked at him like she didn't understand. "You don't know who they are, what they can do." "No," he said, walking to a cabinet and unlocking it to reveal a small rack of communication blockers and EMP grenades. "But I know what I can do." He turned back to her. "I need something from you now." Her hands curled into fists on her lap. "What?" "A name. Even a fake one. I won't call you girl in my server room." She hesitated, then whispered, "Ren. Just call me Ren." "All right, Ren," Keanu said, nodding once. "Let's get you safe before the sun comes up." Ren watched as Keanu moved across the room, his steps deliberate, like a man who'd seen chaos before and refused to let it shake him again. He wasn't asking questions anymore. He was preparing. That scared her more than any weapon. He was taking her seriously, and that meant he believed the danger was real. She clutched the blanket he'd handed her earlier, still trembling despite the room's warmth. She had never meant to be here. She had never meant to see what she saw. But some things once glimpsed couldn't be unseen. And now that Keanu had seen them too, they were both marked. "You okay?" he asked, kneeling to check the stabilizer lock on the server rack she'd collapsed beside. She hesitated. "I haven't slept in 3 days. I changed apartments twice. I left my phone at a train station in Seattle. And I still saw the same guy on every platform. Black coat, mirrored sunglasses. He never blinked, just wait." Keanu nodded. "They want you afraid." "It's working." "Well," he said, standing slowly, "then it's time we make them afraid." She almost smiled, but then the internal alarm system chirped. Not loud, not sirens, just a single tone, low and rhythmic. Keanu froze, then tapped his control panel. "External motion, Sector 4. That's the west perimeter fence." Ren's eyes widened. "Already?" "Could be an animal," he said calmly, but his fingers were already typing a command. The screen displayed a thermal scan. Something large, too symmetrical to be wildlife. Human, armed. "One so far," he confirmed. She moved to the window, careful not to be seen, then backed away. "You should call the police." He shook his head. "They won't get here in time, and if these people are who you say they are, they've probably already compromised local lines." Ren looked down. "Then why help me? You don't even know me." Keanu picked up a tablet and pulled up a digital blueprint of the estate. "Because truth has a cost. And if you're paying it, the least I can do is stand with you while you do." She wiped at her eyes quickly. "They always said you were different." He glanced over. "They? The internet," she said with a nervous laugh. "Reddit threads, whisper sites, even some old tech forums. They called you the last good man in Hollywood, a protector, a ghost who walks into fire for others." Keanu didn't smile at that. He just adjusted a nearby camera feed and said quietly, Then let's give them something to believe in. Another alert pinged. 2 more moving in from the south, he added. Ren stood, steady now. She took a breath. Then, we'd better get ready. Keanu nodded. We have until dawn. And with that, the war for the truth began in silence, with 2 unlikely allies and a single flash drive that could crack the world open. Keanu sat beside the fireplace, watching her hands shake as she clutched the mug of warm chamomile tea. Her hoodie was damp from snow, her breath still unsteady, but her eyes, they were sharp, calculating, haunted. She had pulled the flash drive from her boot, a battered silver thing wrapped in cloth and tape, and plugged it into a secure port on Keanu's secondary server screen. He didn't ask her name again. Not yet. What mattered more was the data, the truth she claimed to hold. I didn't go looking for it, she said, her voice low and uneven. It was embedded, nested deep inside a training module. I thought it was just system lag. But when I unpacked the node, she opened a file directory titled Legacy F, and beneath it a string of subfolders auto-populated. The last folder, Flow Map 19. Keanu leaned forward. The screen changed, loading a grid overlay of the southern U.S. border. At first it looked like any logistics network. Aerial views, satellite pings, thermal reads. But then red lines snaked across it. Not border patrols, not search grids, but narrow pathways, labeled with timestamps and cargo tags. Some marked Hume. Human cargo? Keanu asked, his voice sharp. She nodded. And arms. Some chemicals, too. They use the same routes over and over, camouflaged by legal shipments. But the signature, that's what made it real. What signature? She tapped a sequence of numbers beneath a highlighted drone ID. That's a private drone, military spec. It's registered to Argonne Analytics. Keanu blinked. He knew the name. Argonne wasn't just a cybersecurity firm. They had Pentagon contracts, smart sensor patents, and a deep reach into defense AI. A silent juggernaut. Not the kind of company that left mistakes lying around. And they're moving contraband? Keanu asked carefully. She hesitated, then clicked a secondary log file. Not just moving it, mapping it, optimizing it. The algorithm isn't for detection, it's for efficiency. They're training their AI to be better at trafficking. Silence dropped like a lead curtain between them. Outside, the wind whistled low along the eaves. Where would they do that? Keanu said quietly. They're embedded, she whispered. Argonne's division in Colombia. I think they're working with a cartel group. Maybe Las Nueve. I can't prove it all yet, but the data links are real. This is just the first layer. Keanu stood slowly, his fingers flexed by his side. He walked over to the window and stared into the snow-draped dark. You realize what you've done, he said after a moment. She looked down. They do. That's why they're coming. Keanu turned back. Her face was pale, but not broken. Not anymore. In her eyes was resolve. Then we don't wait, he said calmly. We prepare. Keanu led her to the control room buried beneath the estate, his fallback space, shielded by reinforced walls and electromagnetic dampeners. Few knew it existed. Fewer had ever stood inside. But tonight, the rules were different. As the heavy door sealed behind them, the lights shifted from soft white to a dim, tactical blue. Monitors flared to life in a central circle around a central console. A globe spun gently in the center, dotted with private satellite nodes. Keanu took a seat at the helm, motioned for her to join him. You're telling me this data was part of a training cluster for an AI engine? He asked again. She nodded. Yes, At first, it looked like standard packet injection until I saw the repeat signals. Keanu tapped through screens, navigating layers of the encrypted file structure. "You found it how?" "I was assigned to clean corrupted sandbox nodes," she explained, voice steadier now. "One of the modules wasn't loading. When I went in to recompile, I found ghost code, compressed sequences hidden between syntax calls, nested deep. It wasn't supposed to be there, and instead of reporting it," Keanu said slowly, "you cloned it." "I tried reporting it," she said firmly, "to my direct supervisor. Next day he was transferred. No contact since. A week later, someone broke into my apartment. No robbery, just my backup drive gone. Then a van followed me home." Keanu believed her. The way she spoke, the way her hands fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. She wasn't lying. She was hunted. He leaned in, eyes locking on a detail flashing on the screen. A drone manifest tied to a logistics company. These shipments, they're masked as government ops. "Yes," she said. "Using encrypted comms, rerouted through shadow subnets. The AI hides the real destination by generating fake telemetry data. If you look at the primary feed, everything seems legit. But if you trace the metadata, IT reroutes through Tier 3 proxies that cycle every 12 minutes. I only caught it because one node glitched during a reset. That's when I saw it. Human cargo, marked with thermal identifiers. They're transporting people like freight." Keanu let out a slow breath. "So they're building a machine that doesn't just learn from the traffic, it optimizes it, enhances it." Her voice dropped. "Like Waze for criminals." He stared at the terminal. "How many people know about this?" She swallowed. "Right now, me and you. And if we expose it, they'll destroy us." Keanu turned toward her. "Then we don't expose it yet. We get everything. Quietly. We show the world not just what they did, but how." For a moment, she said nothing. Then her voice cracked. Are you helping me?" Keanu looked her dead in the eyes. Because sometimes the only thing more dangerous than evil is silence. The silence in the room settled like dust. Keanu began isolating the remaining segments of the file she had salvaged. Layer by layer, more disturbing truths surfaced. Coordinates, timestamps, altered mission logs, AI behavioral overrides. It wasn't just evidence, it was a blueprint. She leaned in closer. "This line here, see that? That's not code I wrote." He magnified the sequence. "It's adaptive." She nodded grimly. "It's rewriting itself. That's the part I didn't catch at first. The AI is training on live criminal routes, optimizing for speed, surveillance avoidance, and casualty minimization for smugglers." "Is that even possible?" Keanu asked quietly. "Yes, because the AI was designed to optimize movement, no ethics module, just efficiency." Her voice was brittle. I think someone in the company taught it this pattern intentionally, then buried it under dummy projects. Someone trained this AI to assist human traffickers." Keanu sat back in his chair, every muscle tight. "That's not just corruption, that's calculated." She nodded slowly. "They're hiding behind national defense, funding this through military subcontracts. And if I hadn't stumbled on that node, it would still be growing, learning." Keanu pressed his palms together, brow furrowed. "What's your real name?" She hesitated, then said softly, "Sarah." He nodded. "Okay, sir. From here on, we work together." Sarah's eyes welled, but she blinked the tears back. "We don't have long." Keanu tapped a few keys. "No, but I have something they don't expect." "What?" He glanced toward the curved monitors surrounding them. Isolation, experience, and the element of surprise. Suddenly, an alert flashed red on the far left screen. External signal distortion detected. Keanu's estate security system had been breached before, but this was more sophisticated. Someone was actively probing from outside the perimeter. They weren't just coming. They were already mapping the terrain. "They're here," Sarah whispered. Keanu didn't flinch. "How many routes in?" 3, if they use standard GPS. 5, if they know about private drive access. He stood calmly, moving to a separate panel. "Then we collapse. 4. Sarah followed him into a second room, what looked like a server closet, but behind it was another reinforced hatch. He opened it, revealing a tactical map and manual override controls for the estate's perimeter zones. He flipped a switch. All but one of the access routes shut down. Metal gates locked in place. Trees along the narrowest paths were triggered to fall and block the way. Sarah stared. "You've done this before." Keanu didn't answer. Instead, he walked to a final screen and typed a single command. Mode, black vine, initiated. "What's that?" Sarah asked. He turned slowly to face her. "What means no one gets in, no one gets out, and if they try, the ground itself will push back." In that moment, she saw it. Not the actor, not the celebrity, but the protector, the one who would stand between her and whatever came next, even if it meant standing alone. Keanu didn't waste a second. The girl was still seated by the stone fireplace, hugging her knees beneath the oversized hoodie he had handed her earlier. Her fingers were trembling slightly, not from the cold, but from something deeper, an instinctual fear that hadn't eased since she arrived. Her eyes scanned every window, every reflection, like she was waiting for a laser sight to flash against the glass. But Keanu moved with a different kind of urgency. Calm, measured, unshakable. He walked across the open room to a wall that looked like aged cedar. With a small gesture, a hidden panel slid back, revealing a vertical touchscreen embedded in matte steel. The display lit up with a soft blue glow, asking for his biometric verification. He placed his thumb on the scanner. A soft chime confirmed access. She watched him from across the room, unsure whether to feel relief or suspicion. But what he did next shifted the air between them. From the central dashboard, Keanu activated a digital lockdown. The estate's outer perimeter, which spanned almost a quarter-mile of rocky forest, engaged its remote jammers. Cell towers in a 2-mile radius went dark. Nothing in, nothing out. Every digital trail was erased. "I'm engaging silent mode," he said, almost to himself. "No digital footprint. No emissions except thermal from the roof solar grid." He turned toward her. "You said they track by signal. So now, we don't have one." The girl blinked, stunned. "You can just shut off the world like that?" Keanu gave a quiet shrug. "Most people build smart homes. I built a quiet one." He swiped into the next panel and launched a suite of drone defense protocols. From the rooftop, micro-emitters extended upward like blackthorns, ready to scramble or reroute any unauthorized drone frequencies. A network of counter-surveillance pulses would jam imaging, mapping, or signal relays before they could lock in. The girl stood, slowly approaching. "But they have satellites, AI targeting, that data node I touched. It had military-grade encryption woven into neural net code. You can't just block that with home security." He met her eyes. "This isn't home security." She looked around again, really seeing the place this time. There were no blinking lights, no exposed gadgets, just stone, wood, and glass. Unassuming. But beneath it all was something else. She could feel it now. This was a fortress that pretended to be a cabin. "How did you even—" she started. "I like being left alone," Keanu said simply, "so I made it hard to find me." She nodded slowly, still overwhelmed. Then, I'm safe here? For now, he said, tapping one last command. Outside, a new sound rose, a faint mechanical hum, like the distant cry of a dragon in the snow. She froze. Drone? Keanu's expression didn't change. Could be. Or a test. Then he added softly, we'll find out soon enough. The humming grew louder. Keanu walked to the edge of the wide window facing the ridge. He didn't flinch. The girl stepped behind him, peering cautiously over his shoulder. Snow fell like powdered sugar outside, thick enough to distort shapes and sounds, but not enough to hide the gleam of motion above the trees. A small black drone hovered just beyond the perimeter. Too far to make out clearly, but close enough to know it wasn't local wildlife. Keanu adjusted something on the touchscreen near the fireplace and a section of the ceiling slid open. A thin turret, no bigger than a coffee can, rose up and clicked into place. A soft pulse echoed through the cabin as it locked on. Anti-drone scrambler, he said. Won't shoot it down, just blinds it. The drone shifted midair, erratic for a moment, then turned and zipped away into the fog of trees. The girl let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That was them, she said, her voice thin. They know I'm here. Keanu turned back to her. Then we have less time than I thought. She looked down at the flash drive hanging from the lanyard around her neck. I was trying to upload it before I came here, but every time I routed through a server, it bounced back, like they were already inside the pipes. Where's the original data? Gone, she said. I didn't copy it, I moved it, deleted the source. It's only here now. Keanu nodded. Then this place isn't just a safe house, it's a war room. He walked to the main table and placed a folded map across the top. The map didn't show streets, it was a satellite overlay, layered with red polygons and numbers. She stepped forward, startled to see familiar coordinates. These are active mesh zones, she whispered. How did you... I have friends, he said, and an interest in protecting people the world forgets. She stared at him for a moment. You're not what I expected. You broke into my home with a stolen flash drive and no name, Keanu said. You didn't exactly come in with expectations yourself. A pause, then, my name's Ava. He gave her a small nod. Keanu. I know. He almost smiled. Then he motioned to the center of the map. If they're coming, it'll be from the south slope. The terrain's smoother there. Easier for boots or ground crawlers. We'll reinforce that side. She hesitated, then asked, You really think they'll come tonight? He looked out the window again, scanning the snow. If what's on that drive is half as dangerous as you say it is, they're already on the move. He tapped one last command, locking the estate into level 2 suppression mode. Lights dimmed. Air systems rerouted. A soft blue halo appeared around every window pane, now tuned to deflect thermal scans. Ava watched in silence. The cabin was no longer just a refuge. Was preparing to hold the line. Night fell quickly in the mountains. By the time Ava finished her makeshift map of the routes they could use to transfer the data out, the last light had faded from the peaks beyond the tree line. Keanu had just finished bolting steel plates across the eastern-facing glass wall. It wasn't just for cover. It would also act as a thermal deflector, shielding them from infrared scans. The cabin felt tighter now, but warmer. Ava sat cross-legged on the floor near the low coffee table, cables and tools spread in front of her like pieces of a puzzle. Keanu crouched beside her, watching as she worked. She was focused, tracing wires from a small satellite antenna unit to a receiver she had pulled from her bag. I can patch the signal through your uplink if it's clean, but I'll need a burst window. 10 seconds max. Any longer, they'll trace the spike. Keanu pulled up a small wireless terminal, nodded. My system isolates every packet. I can give you 15 seconds. She looked up, surprised. He smiled faintly. Because I helped build it. Ava stared at him for a moment longer. So all this, the off-grid power, the drone shield, encrypted comms, it wasn't for privacy. It was preparation. Keanu's expression didn't change. Sometimes you build peace by knowing how to survive war. There was a long silence between them. Then Ava picked up a soldering pen and leaned over the receiver again. Her fingers worked quickly, cleanly, more like a surgeon than a hacker. Outside, the snow deepened, coating the pine branches like frosting. The wind picked up, and every now and then the sensors on the porch would flicker, detecting motion, analyzing, confirming whether it was wind or threat. Inside, Ava finally connected the last component. A small green light blinked. "We're ready," she said. "I can send the packet any time." Keanu glanced at the terminal. "Then wait. Don't send it yet." "Why not?" He turned the screen toward her. "Because I just picked up an encrypted ping, south slope, stealth frequency." Ava froze. "They're here." "Not yet. Scouting. Mapping thermal variance. Probably running recon before breaching." She looked at the window. "Do we run?" "No," he said calmly. "We don't give them the satisfaction." Ava's voice shook a little. "What if they get in?" "Then I make sure they don't get out." He reached under the table and pulled out a sleek black case. Inside were 2 communication headsets, compact and military grade. He handed one to Ava and placed the other on his own ear. Ava clipped hers on, still processing everything. "I thought you were an actor," she said softly. "I was," Keanu replied. "Then the world changed." Ava looked at the blinking green light again. "We wait until sunrise?" He shook his head. "We wait until the right moment, then we make it count." From outside came the soft whine of a distant drone. Keanu stood up, calm, ready. The siege had begun, and they were already 2 moves ahead. The night outside was cold and still, the moon veiled behind fast-moving clouds. Keanu moved through the darkened estate like a shadow, every sense alive. It had been hours since the girl showed him the files, hours since he upgraded the defenses. Still, there had been no movement outside. Until now, a faint tremor tickled the ground near the west fence line, barely perceptible to the human body, but enough to trigger Keanu's seismic perimeter. He froze, exhaled through his nose, and activated a silent perimeter lockdown. The girl, hidden inside a reinforced crawl space beneath the library floor, clutched the flash drive like it was sacred. Keanu had shown her the escape tunnel, the signal flares, and the button that would wipe everything in case of capture. She didn't want to use it. Not unless she had no other choice. Outside, 2 shapes moved low to the snow. They weren't amateurs. They wore infrared bloking suits and sound-dampening boots. They didn't trigger the motion sensors. But they didn't know Keanu had adapted his cameras to pick up minute differences in thermal pressure. Something he learned not from Hollywood, but from real-world trainers he never named. He let them get closer. One reached the wall, the other scanned upward with a monocular scope. Keanu was already behind them. A quiet hiss of breath, a flash of motion. The first intruder didn't even make a sound before slumping backward in the snow, paralyzed by a targeted nerve pinch that left him breathing but unconscious. The second turned too late. His arm raised, but Keanu grabbed the wrist mid-air and twisted. The sound of the weapon clattering to the ground echoed louder than expected in the open night. They struggled briefly. Keanu didn't hurt him more than necessary, just enough to leave him on the ground, gasping. When the man looked up, blinking against a low-intensity light, Keanu's voice was calm but firm. "Why are you here?" The mercenary didn't answer. Keanu removed the earpiece from the man's head and tossed it deep into the trees, where a signal scrambler would kill it. Then he pulled off the black visor, revealing tired eyes beneath a tactical helmet. "Wrong house," Keanu said softly. The mercenary spat into the snow. Cortrex Intel sent us. Inside, beneath the floorboards, the girl's heart stopped for a beat. She knew that name. The logo haunted her nightmares. Slick, metallic letters over a white shield. Cortrex was the firm listed on the proxy contracts. The ones guarding the AI node she'd breached, the ones linked to those ghost drones. Her breath fogged in the tiny space. "Oh no," she whispered. She had hoped this wasn't as big as she feared. But it was. And now Keanu knew the name too. Keanu bound the conscious mercenary's hands behind his back with a reinforced cable tie and dragged him toward the small outbuilding near the main garden shed. It wasn't a prison, but the solar outpost had reinforced walls and no signal access. Perfect for temporary holding. Inside, Keanu sat him on a chair and turned on a low lamp, its warm glow casting quiet shadows across the plywood walls. "You said Cortrex Intel. You sure about that?" Keanu asked. The man didn't answer. Keanu didn't push. Not with fists, anyway. Instead, he opened a small cabinet and retrieved a basic field med kit and a glass of water. He offered both. "You're not bleeding," Keanu said, "which means your instructions were clear. Get in, get the drive, and leave quietly, right?" The mercenary sipped the water warily, then, through clenched teeth, said, "They didn't tell us it was your house." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "They said it was a runaway hacker. They didn't say you'd be here. If they had, we wouldn't have taken the job." From beneath the library floor, the girl listened through a low-band earpiece. Keanu had handed it to her minutes before the breach, just in case. His voice was clear in her ear, steady and unshaken. She pressed a trembling hand against her mouth. She didn't want him hurt, not for her, not for the mess she had dragged into his quiet home. Gone to vanish, she whispered to herself. But it was too late for that. Back in the shed, Keanu folded his arms. She didn't steal anything, she found something that wasn't supposed to exist. The mercenary scoffed. She accessed black server space. That's beyond NDA, that's federal-level trespass. Then why isn't Cortrex going to the feds? That silenced the man. Keanu stepped closer, lowering his voice. Because the feds don't even know. Because this isn't about protecting software, it's about keeping something buried. The mercenary looked away, his jaw tight. "She saw things she shouldn't have," Keanu said. "But maybe she's not the one who should be running." Outside, the snowfall thickened, blanketing the perimeter in a deceptive calm. Inside, the girl slowly emerged from the floor access, knees shaking, breath shallow. Keanu met her at the stairwell. "I heard everything," she said. "Thought you might. What do we do now?" He glanced back toward the outbuilding, then toward the massive windows facing the snowy tree line. Somewhere out there, more were coming. But they didn't know the terrain like he did, and they weren't protecting what he was now protecting. "Now," Keanu said softly, "we stop running." She swallowed, the weight of the words hitting her chest. And for the first time since she crossed into his home, she didn't feel like a fugitive. She felt like a witness. The girl sat quietly by the wood-burning stove in the main room, wrapped in a thick gray blanket. Her hands trembled less now, though her eyes darted to every window. Keanu had taken her phone apart, removed the battery, and placed it in a signal-bleaking pouch. Her laptop remained off, its drive tucked into a Faraday sleeve. No signals in, no signals out. "You were right," she said softly, staring at the flames. "It's not just a data leak. It's a cover operation. They're routing physical assets. Humans, weapons, everything. Through drone relays and defense contractors. The code I found, it's like someone carved a tunnel through a fortress." Keanu leaned against the edge of the kitchen island, arms crossed. His eyes didn't leave her face. "And you copied it," he said. She nodded. "Not because I wanted to blow a whistle," she added. "I was just Curious. It was a node hidden under an AI demo, a sandbox environment for machine learning. I thought it was a simulation. It wasn't, Keanu said. And now you're the loose thread. She looked down at her feet. They're going to keep coming, aren't they? Keanu didn't answer right away. He walked to the window and peered through the thermal overlay in the corner of the glass. The infrared grid glowed quiet. No movement. Not yet. Yes, he said, but not tonight. She looked up. How can you be sure? He turned back to her, voice calm. Because they expected silence. A quick grab. They didn't get it. And now they'll hesitate. They don't want a scene. They want disappearance. She nodded slowly, her fingers tightening around the edge of the blanket. Do you think they'll find us here? They'll try, Keanu said. But this house isn't on the grid. Power is solar. Internet is tunneled through a private mesh. Even the mailbox is virtual. I built it to disappear. She smiled faintly. You're not what I expected. Neither are you, he replied. Just then, a quiet alert blinked on a nearby screen. Perimeter drone activity detected. Keanu crossed the room, tapped twice on the screen, and watched as the drone camera footage displayed a thermal blur hovering just beyond the ridge. Watching. Waiting. They're testing us, he said. The girl stood. What do we do? He glanced at her, then reached into a drawer and handed her a small device. A signal disruptor, no larger than a car key. First, he said, we tell them we see them. He pressed a button on the wall panel. Outside, a defensive drone launched from its hidden bay, targeting the watcher above the ridge. A pulse fired silently through the trees, and the hovering blur vanished from the screen. The girl exhaled sharply. Did you just fry it? No, Keanu said. I sent a message. What did it say? He looked at her, eyes steady. Try harder. She stared at him for a long beat and nodded. For the first time in days, she wasn't terrified. She was ready. Keanu stood at the edge of the room, arms crossed, his posture calm but alert. The girl sat curled on a stool, legs tucked under her, the emergency lantern casting shadows across her tired face. Outside, the wind whispered against the windows, but inside, silence hung like fog. He finally asked what had been weighing on him since the moment she collapsed in his server room. You could have run. You had to know they were coming, so why did you stay? She looked up slowly, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Her voice was almost a whisper. Because if I left, it all disappears, everything I found, everything he tried to warn me about. Keanu tilted his head. He? She nodded, pulling her knees tighter. My brother. His name was Elias. He worked for Cortrex, entry-level infrastructure. He loved it at first. Said they were doing good work, protecting digital rights, building secure AI systems. But he started acting strange. Said he saw things he wasn't supposed to. Extra files, rerouted pings, encrypted satellite logs where they shouldn't. Keanu stepped forward. Did he tell you what he found? She swallowed. He never got the chance. He vanished 12 months ago. No message, no calls, no body, just gone. I filed reports, begged the company for answers. They said he resigned and relocated. That was it. The grief in her voice wasn't loud. It was buried. But Keanu recognized that kind of silence. The kind that only comes from knowing someone's still out there. Or worse. Never will be again. I joined their junior dev program just to get access to the system. I thought maybe if I poked around, maybe I could find something. A trace of his login activity, a message, anything. Keanu sat beside her, not close, but enough that she knew she wasn't alone. She continued. I shouldn't have seen it. The node was buried under a fake access directory labeled Legacy Archive 7C. It was masked to look like compressed backup logs from an old weather model, but it wasn't. What was it? Keanu asked. Her hands tightened around her legs. Routing data. Not just text logs, real-time movement, drones, convoys, digital manifests coded in military shorthand. But the IPs didn't trace back to any government. They traced to hundreds of private subnets, shell companies, courier drones flying under medical exemptions that didn't exist. Same paths, same coordinates, again and again. Keanu's voice was steady. What were they carrying? Her eyes met his. Trafficking, cartel-grade payloads, weapons, pharmaceuticals, people, and all hidden inside military-cade AI traffic. It was all protected by Cortrex's internal security system. My brother must have found the same thing. A long silence followed. Then Keanu said, "This isn't just about one firm." She nodded slowly. "It's not even just about me anymore." Keanu stood and moved toward the window, watching as the snowflakes drifted down in lazy spirals outside. The storm had softened for now, but the tension inside the room only grew heavier. "How many?" he asked quietly. She exhaled. "I don't know the exact number. The files I'd decrypted listed over 400 individual drone IDs, each registered to unique shell accounts. But I think that was just the batch scheduled to fly in the next 10 days. There were folders going back at least 2 years, maybe more." He turned. "Why hasn't anyone blown the whistle before you?" She hesitated, then gave a bitter smile. "Because the system eats its own. Anyone working close enough to notice has already signed an NDA that might as well be a death warrant. And people like Elias, we don't have leverage. You raise a red flag in that world. They don't argue. They erase." Keanu's face was unreadable, but something behind his eyes shifted. The calm exterior held firm, but his mind was moving now, fast, deep, calculating. "You said they used your brother." She nodded. "I think they baited him with fake credentials, maybe even planted false leads. I found a line of code in the same archive under his user ID. It redirected me to the live monitoring system. I think he created a backdoor, a digital fingerprint." Keanu paced back toward her. "Did you trace it?" She pulled out her flash drive and set it on the table. "I didn't dare. I only downloaded the proof and closed everything. If I'd stayed even a second longer, they would have had my location. That firewall held up for years because he never activated it. I was the first to enter it. That's what triggered the beacon. And now they know you have it," Keanu said. She looked down. "I didn't just find a file. I found the trail of everyone who's tried to warn the world before. I found erased employee records, terminated contractors, surveillance logs redacted beyond recognition. I found notes scribbled in comment lines of code, like digital graffiti from ghosts." Keanu sat again. "You're saying this is global?" She nodded. "The routing data crosses 3 continents. The drone logs use call signs from US, Mexican, Russian, and private European systems. Whoever runs this network, they've got friends in every alphabet agency you can name, and a few nobody even knows exist." There was a long pause between them. Then she added, barely audible, "I think I was supposed to die last week." Keanu leaned forward, his voice low. "But you didn't, and that means the truth still has a chance." She looked up, surprised to see something unexpected in his face. Not just belief, purpose. The fire in the hearth crackled softly as silence settled between them again. Outside, the wind howled faintly around the corners of the estate. The girl reached for her tea, but didn't drink it. Her hands trembled, not from cold, but from memory. "I didn't mean to find any of it," she whispered. "It started as a test project, school credit. I was interning remotely for a subcontractor tied to Cortrex. They gave me limited access, told me to build a diagnostic tool. It was routine, harmless. But my tool found something it wasn't supposed to. A sealed node, mislabeled. And you opened it. Keanu said quietly. I was curious, she admitted, and reckless. It didn't even have proper encryption, just layers of lazy code that looked official. Once I bypassed the second gate, it unraveled like a thread in an old sweater. She looked at him, eyes glassy. And when I saw my brother's ID, I knew he hadn't just disappeared. He'd been buried under lines of silence. Keanu nodded slowly. What you uncovered, it's more than a leak. It's a breach in humanity's conscience. She nodded, her voice nearly a whisper. That's why I couldn't run, not when I knew it was still out there. He wouldn't have. Keanu leaned back, absorbing her words, connecting dots only someone with years of experience and scars could connect. He knew how governments moved, how private military firms operated in the shadows, laundering violence beneath security contracts and flags. But this was a new frontier, one where satellites didn't just spy, they guided death. Where AI ran interference so well, no one even knew who to blame anymore. She slid the flash drive closer to him. I need help. Not just to survive. I need to finish what he started. He looked down at the small device. Something so tiny, yet powerful enough to shake the bones of global systems. I'll make sure this doesn't die in the dark, he said. She exhaled, relieved. You believe me? I do, he replied. For the first time since entering his estate, she smiled. A tired, cracked smile, but real. Then her eyes went to the large map screen on the wall, slowly rotating through global weather patterns and drone activity grids. They're not going to stop, she said softly. No, Keanu agreed. But neither will we. She looked at him, truly seeing him now, not the celebrity or the actor, but the man who'd stood at the edge of danger more times than anyone could count and chose not fear, but protection. I never even told you my name, she said suddenly. He didn't press. He waited. She hesitated, then offered it anyway. Leah Marin. Keanu nodded once. All right, Leah, let's get to work. And as they both stood, a camera feed in the corner of the room flickered. A thermal signature had appeared just beyond the outer ridge. The second wave was already watching. The wind had calmed outside, but inside Keanu's mountain retreat, the atmosphere remained tense. The house, with its stone walls and glass edges, felt like it was listening. Keanu sat across from the young woman in the softly lit security room. The monitors around them flickered with silent surveillance feeds, infrared views of forest, thermal scans of the perimeter. And one screen zoomed in on the frozen greenhouse. She clutched the flash drive again, still turning it in her fingers like it was the last thing tethering her to sanity. Keanu watched her quietly for a long moment, then spoke in a voice that was calm but gently probing. I've given you time. Now I'd like to know who you really are. The girl hesitated, her lips pressed into a line, jaw trembling slightly. Keanu didn't move. He waited. Eventually, her defenses cracked. My name is Maya, she whispered. Her voice quavered but didn't break. Maya Leon. Keanu said nothing at first. He simply nodded and repeated it gently, like a confirmation. Maya. She exhaled shakily, as if speaking her name had released a weight she didn't know she was carrying. I haven't said it out loud in almost a year, she murmured, eyes darting to the floor. Once I pulled the data, I had to disappear, not just off the grid, off the map. I deleted everything tied to me. My school, my bank account. My name was the last piece I hadn't surrendered. Amy, Keanu asked softly, why bring it here? Maya lifted her eyes. Because you live a life no one really sees. Because you've lost people and still stayed kind. I needed to trust someone who wouldn't turn me in for a headline. Keanu let the words settle between them, like snow on branches. He stood slowly and walked to the stone fireplace, adding a log, coaxing the flame back to life. The orange glow danced across the room. "I've walked away from things too," he said at last. "From people, from careers, from comfort. Truth has a price, Maya, and sometimes you pay it in silence." Maya studied him, surprised by the gravity in his voice. "What did you lose?" He didn't answer directly. He simply turned, his eyes distant but sincere, enough to recognize when someone's still holding on. A low beep interrupted the moment. A proximity alert. Keanu turned to the monitor. A heat signature hovered just outside the west greenhouse wall. Maya jumped to her feet. "Is it them?" Keanu stepped closer to the screen and adjusted the angle. "Drone," he said grimly. Before either could react, a faint flash lit the edge of the display, and a muted explosion rocked the window panes. Glass cracked. Snow scattered. The greenhouse went dark. Keanu turned to Maya. "They know exactly where you are." The two of them moved quickly, but without panic. Keanu led Maya through a narrow side corridor lined with emergency supplies, power modules, and a hidden weapons cabinet tucked behind a false panel. He handed her a compact flashlight and a thermal cloak. "Put this on," he said. "If more drones are inbound, you need to stay invisible." Maya wrapped the cloak around her shoulders, eyes flicking to the monitor still running on the hallway wall. Smoke now curled from the snow-covered greenhouse, and flickering orange confirmed the drone's damage was real. Keanu tapped the screen, switching feeds. "That wasn't a surveillance drone," he muttered. "That was a test run. They wanted to see how close they could get." "And why blow up the greenhouse?" Maya asked. "To send a message. Or a warning. They want us rattled." Maya swallowed hard. "Well, it's working." Keanu glanced at her. "Then use the fear. Channel it. Don't freeze." They reached the backup control room, a more secure chamber carved into the mountain's inner rock. Thicker walls, analog overrides, and no windows. Just steel, silence, and purpose. Keanu activated an interface and began locking down the outer perimeter again. The electric fence hummed back to full power, and a quiet jamming signal rebooted. Maya hovered nearby. "You didn't answer my question before," she said quietly, "about what you lost." Keanu paused, his fingers resting on the panel. "You ever trust someone with everything? All your hopes, your truth, your life?" Maya nodded slowly. "And have them sell it for something small, like comfort or control?" Her breath caught. "My brother," she whispered. "He thought he was doing something good, a job, a way up. But he didn't know what they were building inside Cortrex, and when he tried to walk away, she didn't finish the sentence." Keanu turned to face her fully. "I know that kind of betrayal. I saw people I once called brothers fall in love with their own secrets. Some died for it. Others disappeared." She looked at him with wide, searching eyes. "So, what do you do now?" His expression hardened. "You don't run. Not when the truth's in your hands." She nodded, feeling steadier in his presence. "Then we need to get this data out." "We will," Keanu said, "but not yet. Right now we play defense." Just then, the security system beeped again. This time it wasn't a drone. A single figure stood at the far ridge, too far to identify, but still. They were watching. Waiting. Maya stared at the screen. "And they're getting closer." Keanu studied the monitor. "Yes, but they don't know the ground here like I do. Let them come." He reached for the encrypted comms panel. Maya asked, "Who are you calling?" He didn't look up. "Someone who owes me a favor." The screen dimmed, and Keanu's message sent in tight bursts of code. He used a military-grade frequency buried inside weather station telemetry. Maya watched the encrypted pulses transmit through the satellite uplink, disappearing into the sky like invisible flares. She stepped away, heart pounding. Why did you let me in, Keanu? You didn't know me. I could have been anyone. He closed the panel slowly, then turned to her with quiet steadiness. I watched you collapse, holding proof of something you didn't have to carry. That told me everything I needed to know. Maya looked down, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. The silence between them stretched a few seconds longer than comfort allowed. Then, softly, she said, My name, my real name, is Maya Leon. Keanu blinked once. You sure you want to say that out loud? I do now, she replied. I've been hiding behind fake logins, burner phones, temporary addresses. But tonight, I almost died in your server room. If this is the end, I want to be myself again. Keanu nodded, his voice low and even. Then Maya it is. She met his eyes. I chose to come here, not because I thought you had firepower or private security. I came because you live the life no one sees. You walk softly. You give people dignity, even when they don't ask for it. There was something in Keanu's gaze then, not surprise, but the recognition of someone who'd lived on both sides of trust. You still chose to be kind, she finished, even after all the betrayal. Keanu studied her, the tension in his jaw softening. Kindness isn't weakness, it's clarity. I see people like you clearer than they see themselves. Outside, the wind picked up. A swirl of snow danced across the porch camera feed. And then, another boom. A muffled concussion shook the floor under their feet. Keanu snapped back into motion. That was the West sensor array. He ran to the main panel. 3 of the motion cameras had gone black. Maya's face paled. They're testing our flanks, she said. No, Keanu muttered. They're probing our weak spots. Then another flash on the thermal display. Multiple heat signatures now. 5, maybe 6, moving through the tree line like shadows. Time's up, Maya whispered. Keanu backed away from the screen and grabbed a handheld EMP wand. Then we don't wait. We adapt. What do you want me to do? She asked. He handed her a small pack. Inside were 2 drives, a GPS beacon, and a code book. If I don't come back, Keanu said. You take that and you run to the highest roof in this state. The people I called, they'll find you. But you have to move fast. Maya took the pack slowly. You're not going to die tonight. Keanu gave her a half smile. Let's make sure of that. And then he was gone, into the dark hall, toward the breach. And Maya was alone again, the ring of silence tightening around her heart. The blackout came not with a flicker, but with a pulse. Everything electronic beyond the estate's inner grid died in a silent wave. Outside, the wind stilled. Inside, emergency LEDs bathed the walls in soft red. Keanu stood motionless for half a second, his instincts sharper than the warning sirens that didn't sound. They'd been fried too. Maya's voice cut through the dark from across the room. EMP, that wasn't natural. Keanu nodded once. Secondary systems just kicked in. We're still breathing, for now. He moved quickly through the hallways, reaching a concealed panel in the wall. A small manual crank opened a mechanical drawer embedded with thick analog switches, his fallback for events just like this. Most people didn't even know how to operate systems without screens. Keanu had insisted on learning. I need your eyes, he said as Maya followed him into the control center. She was barefoot now, her sweatshirt sleeves rolled up to her elbows, hair pulled into a messy braid. Despite everything, she looked calm, focused. Isolate the breach zone, Keanu said, flipping the analog switches into place with deliberate force. I wired redundancies through this board last winter, just in case. We'll need them. Maya's fingers danced over the tactile buttons. You buried analog beneath the smart grid. That's prepared, he corrected gently. Paranoia gets you killed. Preparation keeps you alive. She glanced at him. You really expect something like this? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he pointed to the backup servers humming softly on DC power. Plug your tools into Node 3. It still has tracepath logging that bypasses the mainframe. We'll see if anything rode the pulse in. Maya plugged in her device and got to work, eyes scanning lines of raw binary on a dim orange screen. They didn't just hit us with a blind EMP. They coded a piggyback command in the shutdown. Someone tried to burn the drives. Almost got in. Almost? Keanu asked. I locked the cores the moment it hit. They still think they wiped us. Outside, the wind picked up again, hollow and cold. Somewhere in the trees, a distant drone whined, disoriented but still active. Keanu walked to the side of the room and lifted the lid on a heavy, steel-framed console. Inside was a mechanical switchboard, a relic from before the digital age. I built this place to outlive anything, he said quietly. Off-grid solar, internal climate zones, airlocked rooms, all disconnected when needed. Most people call it excessive. Maya paused and looked at him. Why go through all this trouble? Keanu stared at the wall for a long moment before answering. Because I've seen what happens when the world stops watching. I wanted one place that couldn't be bought, tracked, or hacked. Maya studied Keanu for a moment, the dim emergency lights casting long shadows across his face. It was the face the world knew. Stoic, noble, iconic. But this close, under siege and unguarded, it looked different. Tired, perhaps. Or just real. She turned back to the terminal. They'll come again. If they went to the trouble of an EMP, it means they've got ground assets nearby. Probably signal dependent. Cortrex loves remote kills. Keanu motioned for her to follow and led her deeper into the estate, past the tech labs and meditation rooms, past a reinforced stairwell into a sub-level few people knew existed. A corridor opened into a room shaped like an octagon, every surface lined with shelves of ancient radios, solar batteries, and manually operated communication gear. What is this place? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Fallback room, Keanu said. No screens, no internet. Everything here runs on vacuum tubes or hand cranks. If they fry the grid, we still signal. Maya stepped up to an old CB transceiver. I haven't seen one of these since I was a kid. Keanu adjusted a knob. Still works. Got me through a blackout in Haiti years ago. As Maya scanned the frequency bands, Keanu pressed a hand to the steel wall and closed his eyes. They're testing us, seeing how far they have to push before we break. She didn't need to ask who they were. She pulled up a schematic from her drive, projected it onto the tabletop with a miniature LED lens, and showed him the paths. Red lines crisscrossed through military nodes, corporate servers, private clouds. They all traced back to one unseen source. They're a ghost network, she explained. Technically, Cortrex is under a public cybersecurity contract, but off the books, they run logistics for cartels, move currency, scrub identities. The file I pulled was just one thread. Keanu leaned in. And what happens if we expose it? Massive destabilization, public backlash, maybe even blackmail evidence against entire governments. I found at least 3 names connected to sanctioned satellite leases. This isn't just a leak. It's a fracture in the system. Keanu didn't flinch. Good, let it fracture. Truth doesn't care about timing. A faint vibration ran through the floor. Keanu's eyes narrowed. That's not wind, he said. That's a pressure displacement. South Ridge. He moved toward a screen tied to the analog perimeter sensors. A blip appeared. No heat signature, no signal, just movement. They're testing again, Maya said. Keanu flipped a switch, activating the outer perimeter's passive alert system. Let them test. We're not done yet. He handed Maya a headset connected directly to the fallback system. If they breach here, you go to the furnace shaft. Straight down, out into the ravine. You take the drive. You don't look back. Maya looked at him sharply. What about you? Keanu's expression never wavered. I don't run. I hold the line. Maya didn't argue, not because she agreed, but because something in his tone made it clear he wasn't asking for permission. She tucked the drive deeper into her waistband, sealing it with reinforced Velcro. Her fingers shook just slightly as she pulled her hoodie tighter around her frame. Keanu moved through the dark like he had done this before. Not just the tactical side she knew he had training, but the quiet resilience, the kind that came from surviving storms few others even saw. He grabbed a crowbar and walked to the floor panel near the generator system. Beneath it, backup power cables ran on manual routing. He began switching the circuit points by hand, one by one, redirecting power to critical security nodes. I thought you were an actor, Maya said quietly, kneeling beside him to check volt levels. Not this. Keanu gave the barest smile. You thought wrong. She reached up, wiping sweat from her brow. You built a house that runs like a fortress. I built a refuge, he said, because I've seen what happens when people lose places like this, when no one's watching, when there's no one left to believe the survivors. Maya paused. Was it war? Not the kind with tanks, he said, but just as bloody. A sound broke the stillness, a soft scraping from the ceiling vent. Keanu held up a hand. Maya froze. He moved silently, drawing a collapsible baton from his belt. A small device, spider-like, black as tar, lowered slowly into view from the vent. A surveillance crawler. No louder than a sigh. It didn't glow, didn't beep, just clicked quietly as it surveyed the room. Maya mouthed, "What is that?" Keanu whispered, "Cortrex recon drone, Tier 4. It's autonomous, not just watching, learning." She turned, pulled a scarf from her pocket, and tossed it gently into the corner. The crawler adjusted its path slightly, veering to investigate. In that moment, Keanu swung. The baton cracked against the crawler's sensor dome. A burst of static hissed through the air, followed by silence. "Won't be the last," he muttered, tucking the crushed drone into a steel drawer lined with copper mesh. "They'll know we neutralized it, which means they're watching through another eye." "They're mapping behaviors," Maya said. "Testing reactions. It's what I'd do if I were trying to break someone without pulling a trigger." Keanu looked at her. "Exactly. They want us to feel like prey." She shook her head. "We're not prey. Not anymore." Outside, the wind picked up. The security system flickered once, then stabilized, thanks to the manual rerouting. For now, the estate held. Keanu handed Maya a piece of dark tape. "No more speaking in this room. We move to signals only. If they cracked one drone's audio, they'll brute force the others." Maya nodded, fastening the tape over the crawler's shattered mic. She looked at him, this man she once knew, only as a face on a screen. And now, the only person standing between her and extinction. The wind outside shifted. A heavier stillness settled around the estate, the kind that always came before something broke loose. Keanu stood at the center of his control room, his eyes moving from display to display. Maya stood beside him now, not as a runaway or a liability, but as a partner. She moved quickly, tracing the decoy signal through the estate's mirrored network. Each keystroke sent a ripple through Cortrex's tracking systems. They were no longer just hiding. They were leading them into a trap. Keanu switched off the interior lights. The house went dim except for a narrow band of infrared monitors. He pulled open a concealed panel in the floor and began setting magnetic traps. Low-impact concussion units designed to disorient but not maim. He had used them before in a different life, when peace had to be enforced without blood. He worked with quiet efficiency, his breath steady, his hands sure. Maya adjusted a handmade antenna, threading wires into an analog switchboard that hadn't been touched in years. If this works, the decoy firewall will flood their system with fake protocols. They'll chase the data loop and think we've rerouted the files out of the house. Keanu glanced at her. And if it doesn't? She gave a small smile. Then they hit us with everything they've got. He nodded once. There was no panic in either of them. Just motion, purpose. A decision had already been made. They weren't running. In the kitchen, Keanu opened a hidden drawer under the island counter. Inside were non-lethal stun batons, emergency medkits, and a small metal box labeled signal scramblers. He handed 2 to Maya. 1 for your laptop, 1 for the backup router. If they get through the wall, this'll break their drone command feeds. She accepted them without hesitation. You really built all this for a rainy day? No, he said. For when the world goes blind again, when no one's watching, people like you pay the price. I couldn't live in a world where I saw that happen again and did nothing. For a moment, Maya just looked at him. Her expression softened, but the room didn't. Outside, the snow picked up, falling in quiet, heavy flurries that disguised motion but betrayed sound. The motion sensors along the perimeter pinged twice. Then a third time. Closer. South side. Keanu clicked a remote, sealing the entry points with thick steel shutters. The house groaned softly. We've got under 20 minutes, he said, checking his watch. Maybe less. You good? Maya looked him dead in the eye. I've never been good, but I've never been this ready. The next 5 minutes moved with eerie silence. Maya stayed at the north window, eyes tracking her signal decoy through a small terminal running on an isolated battery pack. She'd embedded the final fake packet into a dummy node 3 miles away, bouncing it off a weather satellite Keanu hadn't used in years. The signal shimmered like a mirage, just clear enough to catch, just unstable enough to require pursuit. They're biting, she whispered. They've deployed a crawler drone, trying to triangulate my fake transmission. Keanu didn't look away from the screen above them, where infrared outlines blinked into view. 3 figures now, 2 moving in tandem, 1 lagging behind. He muttered, They're fanning the south entrance, trying to flush us. In the hallway, Keanu activated the first defensive line, infrared pulse fields that triggered disorientation in anyone crossing without a clearance badge. Not lethal, just enough to confuse. They'd walk into a room, convinced they were elsewhere. It was an old Hollywood trick, repurposed for defense. He turned to Maya. Final firewall status? Holding. The dummy node is flooding their traceback port with ghost routes, but it's not going to hold forever. They'll realize we're still here. Keanu nodded, eyes scanning every exit. Then we make sure we're ready when they do. Outside, the snowfall thickened, muting sound, making movement treacherous. The figures moved with disciplined care. Military trained, likely Cortrax's private field unit. Keanu watched as one hesitated by the greenhouse, then turned back toward the garage door. Maya noticed. They're not attacking directly, yet. No, they're mapping, measuring response time. Keanu moved quickly to the breaker panel near the stairwell and pulled a lever. Half the estate went dark. It was intentional. If the house looked unstable, it invited arrogance. The aggressors might think they'd already compromised the power. From her perch, Maya whispered, They just deployed a micro-drone. Keanu froze. It's in the garden, she added. Tiny thing, maybe the size of a coin. They're watching us. He crossed to the far cabinet, pulled out a low-frequency pulse canister, and pressed a button. The garden outside hummed for a second, then the sound snapped. Maya's screen confirmed it. Drone's dead. Nice. He let out a breath. No surprises. Then came the knock. Not at the front door. Not at any door. but a low thud against the far side of the reinforced hallway wall beneath the floorboards. A crawl space. They were probing every possible entry, including ones Maya hadn't known existed. Keanu reached for the non-lethal baton at his belt. They're closer than we thought. They're inside the crawl perimeter? Not yet, but close. Which means it's now or never. Maya stood tall, her hands clenched. Then let's make it never. The first tremor wasn't an explosion. It was a quiet vibration, more like pressure shifting deep underground. Keanu paused mid-step, his hand on the biometric latch to the north corridor. Maya, across the room, froze too. Seismic drone, she guessed. They're testing foundation points, looking for stress points in the house's frame, Keanu muttered. They're not just here to take her. They want to collapse the evidence. The soft buzz of the emergency comm flickered to life. Keanu's off-grid satellite link had picked up a burst of unknown frequency. It lasted only 2 seconds, scrambled into unintelligible static, and then went silent. They're coordinating something big, Maya said, her voice dry. Something that won't leave time for us to respond. Keanu pulled out a small metallic box and handed it to her. Backup drive. I mirrored your data. If I don't make it, find Grace Liu at the Foundation office in Vancouver. She knows what to do. Maya looked at the box, then at him. Don't talk like that. He smiled gently. Then promise me one thing. You'll finish this. Not just the upload. All of it. Before she could answer, the security alarm triggered, a deep bass tone vibrating through the walls. 3 more thermal signatures had crossed the lower sensor array. 6 intruders now. No time left. Get to the crawl tunnel, Keanu said. It'll take you to the west slope behind the solar panels. And leave you? Maya's voice cracked. He looked at her firmly. I need to hold the core. You're the proof, the future. Go. But Maya didn't move. Instead, she stepped toward him and said something he didn't expect. I never had anyone stay, she whispered. Until now. For a second, everything stopped. The storm, the screens, even the flickering backup lights. Keanu felt something unspoken pass between them. Trust. Not the kind you earn, the kind you choose. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Then let's give them a reason to regret coming here. They split quickly, Maya returning to the server den, wiring the final redundancy to a small broadcast node Keanu had hidden inside an old typewriter. Analog enough to be overlooked, powerful enough to reach the satellites. Keanu activated the final security protocol. Magnetic door locks across every floor, counter-surveillance jammers flooding all known drone frequencies, and a rapid dedeployment smoke curtain on the ground floor. Thick, biodegradable, and dense enough to blind heat scanners. Outside, footsteps neared. Maya hit send. The backup node blinked once. Signal sent, bouncing between satellites like a whisper in the void. Inside the darkened hall, Keanu stood alone, silent and still, as the first mercenary came into view through the smoke. They never saw him coming. The moon hung heavy over the snow-covered mountains as silence gripped the valley. But inside Keanu's estate, silence had taken on a different meaning. No longer peaceful, but taut, waiting, electric. Maya sat beside the reinforced server rack, her hands still trembling after the last signal burst. Keanu moved with precise calm, checking the last of the motion sensors embedded in the stone walkways leading up from the forest perimeter. There's a 5-man unit approaching, he said quietly, watching the real-time readout from the passive ground sensors they'd buried 2 years ago. They're split, 3 in the front, 2 flanking. Cortrex? Maya asked, even though she already knew. Keanu nodded. Their boots don't match military cadence, but they're trained, professional, probably ex-public security. The warmth from the solar-heated flooring did nothing to ease the chill building in her chest. She knew this was her fault, but Keanu didn't look at her that way. Not once. He adjusted the dim lighting across the compound to cast deep shadows around the central hallway. Then he triggered a perimeter sweep, a slow pulse of infrared that gave him a flash outline of the incoming squad. "They're not here to talk," he said. Maya knelt beside the dining table, flipping open her battered laptop and connecting it to Keanu's internal network node. "I'll stream everything to the press hub you showed me. Real-time upload. If they breach, it'll be public in seconds." "Good," he said. "Let's make sure they regret every step." She glanced up. "You've done this before." "I've lived through it," he said softly, loading a small launcher with flashburst capsules designed to blind but not kill. Sometimes surviving means not letting others fall. At the front entrance, Keanu activated the maglock grid and dropped a concealed pressure plate beneath the second stair, the kind that triggered a spray of ink laced with a tracking chemical. Non-lethal. Disabling. "We don't kill, no matter what," he reminded her. "I know," she whispered. "Even now, you're still trying to protect everyone." He gave a half smile, then tilted his head. "Did you finish the decoy firewall?" "Almost," she typed fast. "The fake node routes through 4 ghost proxies, all pointing to a fake Russian server. They'll think I'm trying to throw them off my trail, and it'll slow their signal tracking by hours." Footsteps crunched in the snow outside. Keanu's voice dropped. "We're out of time." A second later, the lights flickered as the first drone made visual contact with the greenhouse. Then the alarms began to hum. They were here. The first thud hit the side panel near the greenhouse. A calculated probe, not an assault. Keanu moved silently through the shadows, his body a ghost between walls. A silent signal tapped on his wristband. Zone 3 triggered. The side stairwell. The flanking pair. He pressed a button on the interior console, and a section of glass flooring retracted to reveal a pressure demon corridor, one designed for natural gas ventilation, now repurposed. The moment the first mercenary stepped into the corridor, Keanu activated the low-frequency sound pulse. The man crumpled, clutching his ears, temporarily stunned. He didn't wait for the second. Moving fast, Keanu slipped down a hidden stairwell and intercepted the other flanker with a disorienting flash capsule. The man fell to his knees, eyes tearing. Keanu pulled the weapon from his hip and disassembled it in 3 seconds flat, scattering the parts in opposite directions before zip-tying his hands and leaving him in the snow. Inside, Maya was sweating. The upload was holding, but the feed was drawing serious attention. Pings from media nodes, cybersecurity analysts, even a few unnamed .gov extensions. Someone was watching. Maybe more than one government. Her fingers trembled, but she kept going. Every line of code was a defiance, every ping an act of survival. From the console's interior speaker, Keanu's voice came through, calm but tense. "Maya, we've got 3 more circling to the west gate. Tell me you've got eyes." She tapped into the backup camera relay, patched in from an analog signal they jury-rigged after the EMP. A grainy black and white feed flickered alive, revealing 3 figures crouched low near the tree line. She patched it through to Keanu's visor, then said, "They're coordinated, using infrared. One has a sat look, probably relaying positions." "Got it," Keanu replied. "They're too close for drones. I'll have to draw them in." He moved to the west courtyard, flipping the magnetic panel that exposed the steel gate beams. He pressed his palm to the lock. The gate burst open with a clang. He stood still in the moonlight for just long enough to make them think they had a shot. The first dart zipped past his shoulder. The second he caught on the edge of the reinforced glass of his sleeve guard. They charged. Keanu ducked behind the fountain wall, lured them toward the ceramic perimeter lined with electric tripwire. When the first man reached the base of the garden steps, Keanu activated the sequence. Snap, sizzle, 3 down. Not dead, not bleeding. but not getting up soon either. He took a breath, steady. Then, inside, Maya's voice came through, shaky but alive. "Keanu, the world just saw them, and they saw you." The feed had gone live. Cortex had been exposed. And Maya whispered, terrified, "There's still one more file. I didn't open it before, I was too scared." Keanu returned inside, the cold still clinging to his skin as he peeled off his jacket. His eyes scanned the monitor banks where Maya sat frozen, her face pale, illuminated only by the soft blue glow of the terminal. The security feed was still running, but her hands hovered above the keyboard. She didn't type. She didn't speak. Her thumb gently tapped the edge of a flash drive resting near her laptop, like it was some kind of detonator. "That last file," she said quietly, "the one I didn't open. I think it's the root directory." Keanu leaned closer, his voice low but steady. "Why didn't you open it before?" Maya glanced at him, her expression hollow. "Because my brother told me if I ever saw something labeled Lotus Delta, to destroy it immediately. That was the name on the folder. I thought maybe it was personal, something only he understood. But after tonight, after seeing how far they're willing to go," she hesitated. "I think it's the core, the center of all of it." Keanu looked at the screen. The file sat untouched, encrypted, waiting. Every instinct in him said, tread carefully. But his gut also knew the truth. This was why they were hunting her. Maya turned to him. "What if opening it makes it worse?" Keanu didn't answer right away. He moved to the small kitchen nook and poured them each a cup of water. When he handed one to her, he finally spoke. "I've learned that truth hurts more when it's buried. If there's something inside that file worth risking your life over, it's already worse not knowing." She stared down at the flash drive. "Then, we open it together." He nodded. Maya inserted the drive and typed in the passphrase, a string of her brother's initials and the date he disappeared. The screen flickered. A black terminal opened. Lines of code scrawled, then a cascade of location files. Video footage, voice recordings, legal documents with classified headers, subcontractor lists with unmarked black sites, hundreds, maybe thousands of entries. At the center of it all, a database that appeared to be mapping the movement of human cargo, not just drugs or arms. The trafficking wasn't limited to one region. It spanned continents: Eastern Europe, Central America, Southeast Asia, Africa, protected by layers of shell companies and fake humanitarian fronts, all linked to Cortex. Maya sat back, hand covering her mouth. They're not just using the tech to hide movement, they're orchestrating it. Keanu's jaw clenched. "This isn't about one firm. This is a machine," she whispered. "And we just cracked it." Keanu moved to a drawer and retrieved a hardened drive. "We make 3 backups," he said. "One to send, one to bury, one to guard." Maya looked up. "What happens next?" Keanu turned toward the window, where the last sparks of the siege still flickered in the dark snow. "We finish this," he said, "and we don't run anymore." Keanu sat beside Maya at the encrypted console. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of the screen and the faint amber light of a nearby emergency lantern. Outside, the cold wind howled through the trees, but inside, the silence was heavy with anticipation. Maya's hands hovered over the keyboard. She hesitated. Then she clicked. A single folder opened, one she hadn't dared look at until now. Its name was masked in hexadecimal characters, a string only she would have recognized. It was her brother's old encryption signature, buried beneath 3 layers of camouflage. She had cracked it by instinct. When the file loaded, it was slow, like it didn't want to be read all at once. Strings of code translated into grids. Grids became names. Names aligned under columns, like origin, transport date, asset tag, and, most chilling of all, status. Maya's breath caught. "This isn't just trafficking data," she said softly. "It's military run." Keanu leaned in. "What do you mean?" She pointed. The document traced a system of child relocations, masked as humanitarian extractions, military orphan programs, refugee intake centers, evacuation transport lists. But the destinations weren't schools or care homes. They were blacklisted warehouses near military bases in Asia, South America, and Eastern Europe. A name kept reappearing across all zones: General Roth Calder. He was listed as a signatory, a handler, and eventually as a recipient. Maya clicked a tab labeled Internal Dispatches. There were memos signed by Roth Calder, phrased clinically, with words like logistical containment and unsanctioned variables. Then she searched for a name: Leo Leon. There it was, her brother. Beside it, under status, disposed. Maya gasped. The word echoed in her chest like a gunshot. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She clutched her stomach and sank to her knees. Keanu crouched next to her without saying anything. He didn't offer empty comfort. He just stayed beside her, one steady hand on her shoulder. "This isn't about data," he said, voice low but certain. "This is about people, lives, families." Maya's face twisted with pain. "They used him. My brother was trying to protect someone, and they killed him. They tried to bury him," Keanu said gently. "But you dug him back up. You gave him a voice." Maya wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt, her breath still ragged. The screen in front of her blurred from the tears, but she refused to look away. "He always told me not to snoop around on my own, but when he stopped calling, I had to know." Keanu sat beside her again, his expression unreadable, but his presence unwavering. "You followed his trail. You didn't lose him. You found what he couldn't finish." Maya nodded, swallowing hard. "The last time we spoke, he told me there were places inside Cortrex that even the board didn't want to admit existed. He called it a ghost net, hidden in plain sight, masking real operations inside dummy humanitarian code." She clicked open another file, this one marked Red Watch/Phase 4. The document was a blueprint for global replication, ports, orphan processing hubs, black site labs, all templated with plug-and-play instructions on how to install them in conflict zones. Every step wrapped in legalese and every line covered by shell companies. But the thing that chilled Maya most was the tone. "It's not written like crime," she whispered. "It's written like policy." Keanu leaned forward, absorbing the weight of it. The ring on his finger caught the light as he scrolled through the final pages. "How many people know this exists?" Maya looked down. "Maybe 3, and 2 of them are either missing or dead." "Then you're the only witness," Keanu said quietly. "No," Maya corrected him. "We're both witnesses now." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the original flash drive, the one she had used to escape Cortrex's server banks. It was scratched, the metal casing slightly bent, but it still held everything. "I backed it up on your system too," she said, "but this is the original." Keanu took it carefully, like it was something sacred. "You know what happens next," Maya said. "They won't stop." "I know," Keanu answered, "but neither will we." They stared at the last screen together. A final name caught Maya's attention: Elena Vargas, a senior systems architect, and beside it the note, "At risk, has child." Maya clicked it open, and her jaw dropped. She recognized the woman. So did Keanu. A new thread had just begun to unravel. Elena Vargas. The name echoed in Maya's head as the file opened. A grainy photo appeared. A woman in her late 30s, with tired eyes and her hair pulled back into a simple bun. She wore a government badge clipped to her jacket, DOD contractor clearance, and in her arms, a little girl no older than 4. The timestamp read 7 months ago. Keanu leaned in. I know her. She spoke at a cybersecurity conference 2 years ago. Quiet, brilliant. She walked out of the panel halfway through, said something didn't sit right. He disappeared? Maya whispered. A few Reddit threads mentioned it. I didn't realize she was working for Cortrex under a different name. Below the photo was a single status line. Disposition pending, location unknown. Maya's voice caught in her throat. They were watching her, just like they watched my brother. And now they'll come for the child? Keanu said, his jaw tightening. He turned toward his private terminal and pulled up an encrypted communication line. We're done reacting, he said firmly. We go on the offensive. Maya's fingers hovered over the keyboard. You want to expose them? The employee. I want to bring them down. They began working in tandem, Maya decoding a web of signal traces tied to Elena's last known login, while Keanu initiated contact with a trusted human rights network that operated out of Brussels. This wasn't just about saving one woman or uncovering one conspiracy anymore. It was about the system itself. Outside, the wind howled across the mountains, a low reminder that danger still surrounded them. But inside, 2 people. One hardened by years of silent resistance, the other born into a jidral war she never asked for, sat shoulder to shoulder, united by the truth. Where does it feel like we're at the beginning again? Maya asked softly, her eyes scanning endless code. Keanu answered without looking up, because exposing darkness doesn't end things, it starts something new. Maya looked down at the flash drive in Keanu's hand, now warm from being held. It was small, almost insignificant, but it held everything. Her brother's sacrifice, Eleni's risk, the children caught in between. We won't let them be erased, Maya said, her voice steady now. Keanu nodded once. Not on our watch. The sky over the Rockies was still dark when Keanu sat across the table from Maya. The fireplace behind them cast long shadows, but the room was silent, heavy with the weight of what they had just discovered. The red file had changed everything. It wasn't just about data now. It was a living record of lives lost, stolen, and manipulated. And the decision of what to do next couldn't wait. Maya paced, the flash drive clutched tightly in her fist. If we send this out there, we don't get a second chance, she said. It's not just them coming after me anymore. It could ruin people, big people. Keanu nodded slowly. Or it could protect others and stop it from happening again. Maya looked at him, unsure. Who would believe a 19-year-old hacker who broke into a celebrity's house? I know someone who will, Keanu replied. He reached for a secure phone from the hidden drawer in his desk. The line he dialed wasn't in any public registry. It rang only once before a calm, familiar voice answered. Keanu. It's been years. Hello, Daniel, Keanu said, his voice steady. I need a favor, one that could change everything. The man on the line was Daniel Kwan, a human rights lawyer with a reputation for defending whistleblowers. Years ago, Keanu had helped evacuate his team from a humanitarian crisis in Sudan. They hadn't spoken in a decade, but trust never expired between them. I need you to review some files. They're sensitive, dangerous, but they expose something real, something global. There was a pause. Where did they come from? A girl, Keanu answered. Smart, brave, and hunted. Daniel didn't hesitate. Send them. Encrypted. I'll meet you in 2 days. Keanu hung up. Maya stared at him, stunned. You trust him? And he owes me, Keanu said. But more than that, he cares. He'll take this to the right hands. Maya sank onto the couch, her fingers trembling. So what happens now? You speak, Keanu said. You testify, and I stand beside you. She looked at him, eyes wide. Even if they come back? He nodded. Especially if they do. The following morning, the mountain air was sharp and still, snow crunching underfoot as Keanu and Maya made their way down to the communications hub built into a hidden sublevel of the estate. Maya had barely slept. The adrenaline was fading, but the fear still sat in her chest like a stone. Are you sure this place is secure enough? She asked, her breath clouding in the cold. Keanu gave a faint smile. This system is air-gapped. No remote access, no wireless bridge. Only one way in or out. She nodded, trying to steady her hands. In the past 12 hours, she had gone from fugitive to witness. It was a shift she wasn't sure she could bear. But she wasn't alone now. That mattered more than she had expected. Maya pulled up the files. She had triple encrypted them, buried them in layers of false code and mirrored headers. She showed Keanu how to load them into the secure transfer protocol they'd built together. Once launched, the data would go straight to Daniel's isolated drop server, untouched, unscrambled, untouched by prying eyes. When the final file was ready, Maya hesitated. Keanu rested a hand gently on her shoulder. This is your choice. She exhaled, clicked send. There was no dramatic sound, no explosion of light. Just a confirmation message. Transfer complete. The silence that followed was heavier than the wind outside. Keanu turned to her. You just changed the world. Maya didn't answer. She stepped back from the console and walked to the window, watching the distant ridge beyond the trees. The estate was quiet again. No drones, no gunfire. Just the sound of birds returning, as if nature was reclaiming the stillness. But Maya knew the peace was temporary. They're going to know I sent it, she said quietly. Yes, Keanu replied. They'll come again. Yes, he said again. Maya turned to him, her voice trembling. Do I run? Keanu looked her in the eye. No. You stand, you speak, and now you don't do it alone. Maya swallowed hard. I've never had someone say that to me. Then let this be the first of many, he said. Later that afternoon, Daniel Navarro, the human rights lawyer Keanu trusted most, called back. His voice came through on a secured line, low and steady. I've gone through the files. My God, Keanu, this isn't just corruption. This is systemic, international, and deeply buried. Keanu responded calmly. That's why we're sending it to you. Daniel paused. You understand what happens when this goes public. There are names here, military, corporate, even elected officials. This will not end quietly. I don't expect it to, Keanu said, but it needs to end. Maya sat close, listening to every word, her knees pulled to her chest on the corner couch. When Daniel asked who the whistleblower was, Keanu gently passed her the phone. Her hands shook slightly as she raised it. My name is Maya Leone, she said, and I'm not hiding anymore. There was silence on the other end. Then Daniel's quiet respect came through. You're brave, and you're not alone. I'll handle the release and ensure protections are requested under federal whistleblower statutes. But Maya, once this hits, you'll be a target. I already am, she said, but now I'm ready. When the call ended, Maya leaned back and stared up at the ceiling. The weight in her chest was still there, but it had changed. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was responsibility. Keanu stood nearby, quietly rechecking perimeter sensors and prepping analog backups. She watched him for a moment, then asked the question that had been building all day. Why me? Why help me when you could have turned me in or walked away? You didn't stop working, because I've seen what happens when people don't stand up, and I promised myself I'd never be one of them again. She took that in slowly, letting the silence settle again. A moment later, she whispered, Thank you. Keanu finally turned to face her. Just remember, Maya, this isn't about revenge. It's about repair. You're not just breaking a system, you're planting something new. She nodded. I want to believe that. You don't have to believe yet, he said. Just keep walking forward. Outside, the wind stirred the snow in soft spirals, as if the mountain itself was exhaling. Inside, a storm had passed, and the first seeds of justice had been sown. The sun crept over the horizon, casting a soft gold hue across the snow-covered peaks outside Keanu's estate. Inside, the silence was no longer heavy. It felt calm, even safe. Maya stirred first, rubbing sleep from her eyes as she sat up on the leather couch where she had finally allowed herself to rest. Her body ached, but her heart wasn't pounding like it had the night before. That was something. Keanu had already been up, moving with quiet discipline. When she walked into the kitchen, she found him standing by the stove, pouring hot water over a pair of mismatched mugs filled with instant coffee. There was a gentleness in the routine, in the way he handed her the mug without a word. They drank in silence at first, watching steam rise. Then, unexpectedly, Maya let out a quiet laugh. It surprised even her. Keanu raised an eyebrow. Something funny? It's just instant coffee. After everything. Drones, mercenaries, red files, and classified data leaks, and here we are, sipping powdered coffee like it's a normal Saturday morning. He chuckled softly. It's tradition. After the storm, you sip something hot. Doesn't matter what. Maya took another sip, smiling. You really aren't what I expected. Keanu set his cup down and reached into a drawer. He pulled out a sleek black tablet wrapped in a cloth, then handed it to her with a small envelope taped to the front. She looked at him questioningly. Encrypted, isolated, untraceable, he said. The hardware's clean. You'll need that if you plan to keep going. She peeled open the envelope. Inside was a simple, handwritten note. Use this to build something better. Her throat tightened. The last time someone had given her a device, it had led her into a nightmare. This felt different. This felt like hope. She looked up. Why are you helping me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked past her, out the window to the fading shadows on the mountainside. Because I've been helped before. Because I owe the world better than silence. And because you remind me that truth still has defenders. Maya held the tablet to her chest, then nodded. Then I'll make it count. After breakfast, Maya walked through the main hall of the estate, fingers brushing the edge of the wooden railing. The walls were lined with framed photos, some of Keanu with charity workers, others with children in distant countries, smiling through hardship. She paused at one. A black and white image of Keanu crouched beside a boy holding a book, both of them mid-laugh. There was no caption, just life, frozen in kindness. She turned and saw Keanu behind her, watching silently. He's from Cambodia, he said. That was almost 20 years ago. He couldn't read before we met. Now he runs a library. Maya nodded slowly, her voice soft. You didn't just build a house up here to escape. No, he said. I built it so that when things fall apart, someone still has a place to land. She stared at the tablet again, her fingers curling around its edges. You think this thing can actually help? Not alone, he said. But in the right hands, it's a beginning. They moved into the study, where the fire still glowed gently in the hearth. Maya pulled a small chair to the oak desk and set the tablet down. Keanu handed her a secure pen drive and walked away, giving her space. She opened a blank document and stared at it. A dozen thoughts rushed through her mind. Data logs, surveillance tags, Cortrex's black sites, her brother's name marked disposed. She wanted to scream it all, to burn it down, but fury wasn't strategy. Keanu's voice returned to her. Use this to build something better. She began typing. The words came slowly at first, Not just facts, but a story. Her story. A girl whose brother vanished into a defense firm's machine. A coder who uncovered more than she was ever meant to see. A night in the snow. A man who chose to protect her. And a fire that still burned, no matter how cold the world had gotten. She didn't just want to expose Cortex. She wanted people to understand what silence had cost. By the time Keanu returned with more coffee, her fingers were flying. He set the cup beside her and said nothing. But his presence said everything. The draft took shape with a clarity Maya hadn't expected. It wasn't just a technical document. It was a testimony. She included the metadata, the military site patterns, the drone logs, and the chain of command that led all the way to General Roth Calder. But interwoven were the human moments. The boys from the orphanage in Tripoli who never came home, the hidden clinics that vanished off satellite maps, and her own brother, Luca, reduced to a 3-line entry in a black file. Keanu read quietly over her shoulder. His expression didn't change, but his hands clenched once, briefly, when he saw the word disposed. "I didn't cry for a long time," Maya admitted, voice barely audible. "I think I was afraid that if I started, I'd never stop." Keanu knelt beside her chair, facing her. "The world doesn't need more silence. Let it hear you." She nodded, tears threatening but not falling. Instead, she reached for the encrypted file locker on the tablet and attached her signed statement. Keanu added a secondary authorization, binding it to legal counsel in 2 countries. As the upload began, Maya exhaled slowly. A single light on the screen blinked amber, then green. "It's done," she whispered. A moment passed before she stood and walked to the window. The mountains stretched beyond the glass, their peaks golden with morning sun. A light snow had started again, soft flakes dusting the world clean. "I don't know what happens next," she said quietly. Keanu joined her, standing shoulder to shoulder. "You don't have to. You only have to keep walking." She looked up at him. "What if they come again?" He didn't hesitate. "Then they'll find we're not alone." In the distance, a hawk glided along the ridge. Below, the earth held quiet strength, untouched by the chaos of power and politics. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt that strength in herself, too. And in Keanu, she had found something rare. Not just protection, but partnership. Not just safety, but belief. She turned back toward the desk. "Then let's make sure this story doesn't just end." He smiled. "It won't." The morning fog had just started to lift when Keanu opened the envelope that had been slid under his door. It was unmarked, handwritten, with no return address. Just one line in bold. "She's not the only one." The words hit like a weight, pressing into his chest as if the truth had multiplied overnight. Inside was a second sheet, scrawled in block letters. "There are others, young, smart, frightened, trapped." No signature, no instructions, just a silent alarm from inside Cortex. Keanu stared at the message for a long time, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. He had protected Maya, but now he knew there were more like her, perhaps dozens, perhaps hundreds, each holding truths too dangerous to speak. He walked out to the porch where Maya was sitting, laptop open, fingers flying across the keys. She looked up at him, sensing the shift in his expression. "What is it?" she asked. He handed her the letter. She read it once, then twice, before setting it down. "Then we have work to do," she said simply. There was no fear in her voice, only resolve. Keanu nodded. "We need to build something bigger than protection. We need a platform, a signal that echoes back louder than the silence they've endured." "Echo root," Maya said, almost without thinking. "A root system doesn't need the spotlight. It supports everything from underneath, quietly, strongly." The name struck him, fitting, protective, deep. "We'll make it digital, encrypted, invisible to the ones watching but clear to the ones searching," he added. They began drafting designs together that morning, sketching frameworks on scrap paper, reconfiguring code for resilience and anonymity. Keanu contacted a few trusted names from his humanitarian networks, developers, advocates, journalists, each one sworn to silence until they were ready. Maya looked at him later that afternoon, her eyes steady. "No more hiding," she said. "Not for me, not for anyone." Maya's declaration marked a turning point neither of them could deny. They moved with urgency but precision, assembling the foundation of Echo Root from a corner of Keanu's estate that now felt more like a war room than a retreat. On the walls, they pinned sketches of interface designs, access protocols, and global whistleblower protection statutes. The kitchen table transformed into a staging ground of laptops, cables, and mugs of half-drunk tea. By day 3, they had secured the digital shell of Echo Root, a network built not just to hold files, but to shield the people who carried them. Maya designed a double-blind upload system that erased all metadata. Keanu coordinated with allies in 3 different countries to mirror the platform, making it impossible to shut down from any one location. But the heart of the project wasn't the tech, it was the mission. They added a simple oath every user would see before submitting anything. You are not alone. You are not disposable. Your voice is safe here. Keanu's contacts were already feeding stories in quiet leaks from military hospitals, orphanage supply chains, privatized prison contracts with suspicious oversight. One story arrived from Romania, another from the Philippines, each a thread leading back to the same web, Cortrex and its silent partners. They had built a system for truth. Now came the risk of turning it on. That night, as Maya installed the final encryption layers, she paused. What if someone breaks through? What if they use it to trace others? Keanu stepped beside her, placing a quiet hand on her shoulder. Then we fight, again. We keep fighting. The world isn't safe yet, but it's safer because of what you've done. She nodded, wiping a tired tear from the corner of her eye. Outside, the moon cast pale light over the tree line. For the first time in weeks, the estate felt calm. No drones buzzed in the distance, no shadows crept across the motion sensors. But both knew the silence wouldn't last. Maya looked back at the screen. Echo Root's homepage pulsed gently in green against black. Live. Secured. Listening. You ready to make it real? She asked. Keanu smiled. Let's make it loud. The launch of Echo Root was quiet by design, yet its presence sent tremors through the digital underground. Whistleblowers who had gone silent began reaching out, testing the platform's promise. A young translator from a military base in Turkey uploaded files suggesting organ trafficking through contractor-run clinics. A teenage logistics intern from Bogotá disguised as medical aid. Every file was encrypted, verified, and routed through triple anonymous chains before Keanu and Maya reviewed them. Each story was a wound, but each voice was a spark. Keanu arranged discreet meetings with a handful of international journalists he trusted. The goal wasn't fame. It was exposure. Echo Root didn't scream. It whispered into the ears of those brave enough to publish the truth. Within a week, an exposé ran in a respected European outlet, hinting at a global shell network tied to defense firms. No names yet, no targets, but it was enough. Enough to shake the shadow. Enough to let others know the silence was cracking. Maya sat on the porch one evening, staring at the stars. "We used to talk about space," she said softly, "my brother and I. He wanted to build something that could outlive the noise. Something good." Keanu sat beside her. "You are." She looked at him, weary but radiant in the moonlight. "So are you." He didn't reply, just handed her a sealed envelope. It came today. Inside was another letter. No return address, the same typewritten format as before. 3 sentences. She started something too. She was 17. They made her disappear. But her code is still alive. Protect it. Maya clutched the letter to her chest. Another voice. Another seed. Echo Root wasn't just saving the vulnerable. It was resurrecting the forgotten. She turned to Keanu, a new resolve in her voice. We're not just building shelter. We're planting a forest. He nodded slowly. And we'll protect every root. As the wind stirred the pines beyond the porch, Maya reached for her tablet. More files were arriving, more voices, more stories. Each one an echo, and each one a warning. They weren't done yet. But they were no longer alone. Maya stood at the edge of the Capitol steps, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the collar of the navy blazer Camilla had mailed her just a week earlier. It was too big in the shoulders and smelled faintly of lavender detergent, but it made her feel grounded. The early morning light over DC was soft, but the mood was anything but gentle. Today wasn't about comfort, it was about truth. Beside her, Keanu stood, silent in a dark gray suit, eyes calm, steady as stone. He didn't speak, didn't push. He simply nodded when she turned to glance at him one last time before the doors opened. Inside, the air felt colder, more clinical. Men and women in sharp suits murmured to each other before falling quiet as Maya entered. This was a closed session. No cameras, no press. Just lawmakers, advisors, and a stenographer ready to capture every word. She approached the microphone slowly. Her shoes barely made a sound, but her heartbeat roared in her ears. She paused, took a breath, then spoke. "My name is Maya Leone," she said. "I am 19 years old. I am here because I discovered something I wasn't supposed to." Chairs shifted. Some crossed their arms. Others leaned forward. "My brother disappeared last year after working at Cortrex Intel. Everyone told me to move on, but I couldn't. I followed the breadcrumbs he left, and what I found..." She hesitated, eyes scanning the room. "What I found was a network of trafficking, laundering, and exploitation buried in defense contracts and AI training data. Hundreds of names, some marked as transferred, others marked as disposed. The silence that followed wasn't indifference. It was the kind of silence that follows a wound being exposed in public. Raw, shameful, impossible to ignore." Maya's hands were no longer shaking. "I'm not here to be a hero," she said. "I'm here because I believe people deserve to know the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it costs everything." Outside, Keanu stood just beyond the chamber doors, watching a muted feed of the room on his phone. He didn't need sound to know that something important had just begun. The session continued in near silence. Every sentence Maya spoke carved deeper into the room's conscience. She answered questions with clarity, refusing to let emotion eclipse the data, but not hiding it either. One senator asked how she had gained access to the Cortrex systems. "My brother left a login hidden inside an encrypted image file," she replied. "He embedded it in an old photo of us from the orphanage. He knew I'd look there." And she had. What began as a desperate search for closure became a mission she never imagined carrying. After nearly 2 hours, she stepped away from the podium. Her legs trembled, but her spine remained straight. One of the committee members, an older woman with white hair and a pin shaped like a sunflower, stood and said, "Ms. Leon, thank you for your courage." Maya nodded once, then turned and walked out. Keanu was waiting just outside the chamber, hands folded in front of him. Their eyes met across the marble hallway. For a long moment, Maya just stood there, frozen by the weight of what she had done. Then she walked straight to him and took his hand. "Bress is waiting down the steps," he said quietly. "I figured," she replied. They exited side by side. Cameras exploded with flashes, microphones were thrust forward, reporters shouted questions. About Cortrex, about her brother, about the files. Maya didn't flinch. She simply raised her hand once, gave a brief wave, and held on to Keanu's arm as they made their way to the black SUV parked just off the curb. Inside the car, silence reigned again, but it wasn't heavy. It was earned. "You did what few ever do," Keanu said as the driver pulled away. "You stood in front of power and told the truth." "I thought I'd feel lighter," Maya said. "You will," he replied. "But first you rest." As the city shrank in the rear window, Maya leaned her head against the cool glass. The adrenaline was fading, but something else had begun to rise in its place. A sense of release. A strange, quiet kind of peace. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in months, she wasn't running anymore. They arrived back at the mountain estate just before dusk. The air was thinner, quieter, clean in a way that cities could never quite replicate. Maya stepped out of the SUV, her eyes adjusting to the sweeping view of snow-dusted peaks and winding tree lines that curved toward the horizon. Keanu opened the door to the main lodge and set his bag down, but instead of going inside, he walked toward the clearing beside the greenhouse. Maya followed. The ground had thawed just enough to allow digging. A single young sapling stood nearby, its roots wrapped in burlap, a wooden stake hammered beside it for support. Keanu had already prepared the hole. He stood over it for a moment, then looked back at her. "This spot catches light early," he said. "It'll grow fast here." "What kind of tree is it?" she asked softly. "A sugar maple," he replied. "Strong roots, sweet resilience." He took the sapling in his hands and lowered it into the ground. Together they filled the hole, pressing soil gently around the base, then tying the trunk to the support post. When it was done, Keanu stepped back, brushing the dirt from his gloves. "Wear this?" Maya asked, her voice a little shaky now that the storm had passed. Keanu's eyes didn't leave the tree. "Because truth needs to root somewhere real, not just in files, not just in hearings or headlines, but in places where people can sit beneath it, long after we're gone, and still feel safe." Maya said nothing for a long time. She just stood there, hands in her coat pockets, staring at the little tree. Its branches barely reached her shoulder, but already it felt like it had always been there. She reached into her bag and pulled out the encrypted tablet Keanu had given her, her future now resting in that slim glass frame. "We should call it something," she said. He turned toward her. "This place, this moment, everything we're building." Keanu smiled. "What do you want to call it?" She looked at the tree, then back at him. "The unseen garden." He nodded. "Perfect." And as the final light slipped behind the Rockies, the wind carried with it the sound of roots settling in. Quiet, steady, and unafraid. The morning light spilled through the tall glass panes of the Rocky Mountain retreat. Keanu stood quietly on the deck, the ceramic mug warming his palms. The coffee inside had long gone cold, but he didn't notice. His gaze drifted across the vast forest below, where fog still clung to the earth like a memory that refused to lift. Silence, pure, uninterrupted, wrapped around the estate. The hum of the smart systems, now stable and secure, was the only sound behind him. No drones, no shadows in the sky, just the gentle rustle of pine trees and a single hawk soaring in the distance. Inside, laughter echoed down the hallway. A real laugh, not out of nerves, not as a mask, but laughter from a place of freedom. Maya sat on the polished wood floor of the multi-purpose room with 3 local teens, all huddled around a single open laptop. She had a dry erase board behind her filled with hand-drawn encryption diagrams and code logic flows. The topic, digital sanctuaries, how to build safe spaces online for people with no voice. Her posture was relaxed but upright, her face serious yet light. The hunted look she had carried when she first arrived was gone. What remained was fire, shaped by trust. Keanu didn't step into the room. He stayed in the doorway, listening, watching. This was her space now. A week ago, she was just a frightened girl hiding in his server room. Now, she was teaching kids how to take back their digital futures. The shift hadn't happened all at once. It came in quiet conversations, long nights of coding by flashlight, and one unshakable decision to stand for something instead of running again. He turned and walked to his study, opened his laptop, and clicked on a private journal file. The cursor blinked, waiting. He thought of everything she'd endured, everything she'd risked, and everything still ahead. Then he typed just one line. She broke in with fear, she left with courage. He powered down the device, leaned back in his chair, and closed his eyes. Not to escape, but to feel the weight of peace, for once, settling in like roots beneath the soil. That afternoon, the wind carried the smell of fresh soil and cedar. Keanu stepped outside once more, this time to find Maya kneeling in the corner of the open garden plot they had cleared just days earlier. Her sleeves were rolled to the elbows, hands buried in the dirt, pressing tiny seeds into rows she'd lined out with string. No tech, no code, just fingers, earth, and purpose. He didn't say anything at first. He just watched. She looked up and smiled, then wiped her hands on her jeans and stood. "It's funny," she said, brushing hair from her face. "I used to think the internet was the only place I existed. Now I feel more real here, under these trees, than I ever did behind a screen." Keanu nodded slowly. The world online moves fast, but roots, they take time. Maya looked down at the small pouch of seed still in her hand. "You really think people like me can grow things that last?" "I think you already are," Keanu said. A pause passed between them, warm and still. In the distance, the young teens she'd been teaching earlier were hammering together compost bins, their laughter rolling across the slope. One of them, maybe 15, wore a t-shirt that read, "Protect the Truth." Maya had printed it herself. Keanu walked to the edge of the garden and picked up a flat stone, dark and smooth. With careful hands, he placed it at the head of the first row of sprouts. Then he pulled from his pocket a thin, hand-carved wooden tag. On it, etched in Maya's own looping handwriting, were the words, "Echo Root Plot 1, planted with courage." Maya blinked fast, the emotion catching her off guard. "I wasn't sure what to call it," she said quietly. Keanu smiled, the lines around his eyes softening. "That's the right name. Echo Root means we don't forget where things begin, especially the brave things." Maya crouched again and pressed the tag into the dirt, firm and steady. Behind her, the mountain stood silent, a sentinel for this new life taking shape. One seed, one truth, one connection at a time. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel hunted. She felt home. That evening, after the teens had gone home and the garden was blanketed in the cool hush of twilight, Keanu returned to the quiet room overlooking the slope. The lights were low, the windows wide open. A fire flickered in the stone hearth. He sat at the old desk, opened his journal, and began to write. He broke in with fear. She left with courage. The words spilled out easily, carried by something deeper than memory. He thought about how Maya had arrived, trembling, chaste, holding secrets too heavy for someone her age. And now she moved with purpose, with peace. A soul no longer shrinking in the dark, but standing in the light, planting truth like seeds. He glanced toward the window. Below, Maya was sitting in the grass with Rosie, the youngest girl from the nearby center. They were passing a flashlight back and forth, tracing constellations in the sky with soft whispers. Not satellites, not drones, just stars, real ones. The silence was golden. As the fire cracked gently beside him, Keanu leaned back and exhaled. Not all stories ended in peace, but this one, This one was different, because someone brave chose not to run, someone broken chose to speak, and someone quiet chose to listen. He closed the journal and set it aside. Then came the voiceover. Sometimes the greatest armor isn't steel, it's trust. The screen slowly faded to a simple white background. Then a final message appeared in black lettering. Have you ever stood up for someone when no one else would? Tell us in the comments. And what mission should Keanu take on next? Subscribe to follow every step. The camera lingered for a few more seconds on the glowing garden and the girl who once hid in shadows, now helping others bloom. A closing breeze rolled through the trees, and just before the screen went dark, one last image appeared. The hand-carved tag, still firm in the soil, under a blanket of stars. Echo Root Plot 1, planted with courage. This wasn't just a story about data. It was about what happens when one person chooses to protect the truth, and another chooses to believe in it.